Action.
Hi, this is Susan Berghofer, and today we're going to be demonstrating the axial muscles of the cat. First of all, we have the digastrix muscle here, and it's on the side here. It originates on the inner surface of the mandibular symphysis and mastoid process. The insertion is at the hyoid bone, and the action is to depress the mandible and elevate the hyoid and larynx when swallowing. The microhyoid is here, and it originates on the inner surface of the mandible. It originates on the inner surface of the mandible. Insertion is at the body of the hyoid bone, and the action is to depress the tongue when swallowing. The sternohyoid is here. It originates on the sternal end of the clavicle and posterior side of the manubrium. Insertion is at the body of the hyoid bone, and the action is to depress the hyoid and larynx. Next we have the sternomastoid, which is here. And the sternomastoid originates at the manubrium of the sternum and the medial portion of the clavicle. The insertion is at the mastoid process of the temporal bone. Action is to bilaterally flex the neck. The clavotrapezius is on the back of the neck, and it's here. It originates on the superior nuchal line of the skull and medial dorsal line of the neck. Insertion is at the clavicle. The action is it draws the clavicle dorsally and cranially. Next we have the masseter, and the masseter is up here. It's the muscle for mastication or chewing, and it originates at the zygomatic arch. Insertion at the angle and ramus of the coronoid process of the mandible. Action is chewing and closing the jaw. If we move down to the abdomen, we have the linea alba. It's it's a tendinous sheath right here. It's just the line, and it's a fusion point for many of the muscles of the abdomen. The rectus abdominis is this white square looking muscle here. It originates at the pubic crest and symphysis. Insertion at the xiphoid process and costal cartilages of ribs 5 through 7, and it allows for lumbar rotation. The external oblique are here, or the obliques. They originate at the outer surface of the lower 8 ribs. Insertion at the linea alba, so right on this white line here, they insert, and the pubic crest and tubercle, and also at the iliac crest. The action is for flexion of the vertebral column, compression of the abdominal wall and contents, aids the back muscle with lateral rotation and flexion. Internal obliques are here. They originate on the lumbar fascia of the back, iliac crest, inguinal ligament. Insertion again at the linea alba, and the pubic crest and costal margins of the last 3 to 4 ribs. The action is flexion of the vertebral column, compression of abdominal wall. It also aids the back muscle with allowing for lateral rotation and flexion. The transversus abdominis is this darker colored muscle right here, and it originates at the inguinal ligament, lumbar fascia, cartilage of the last 6 ribs, and iliac crest. Insertion is at the linea alba again, here, and also at the pubic crest. The action is to compress the abdominal contents. The pectoralis muscles up here in the chest. First we have the pectobrachialis, which is here, and pecto antebrachialis here, and it originates on the manubrium, which is here. Insertion is at the fascia of the forearm, and the action is to draw the arm to the chest. The pectoralis major is this muscle here. It's smaller in cats than in humans, and it originates at the sternal end of the clavicle, the sternum, ribs 1 through 7, and aponesis of the external oblique muscles. Insertion is at the intertubercular sulcuses and greater tubercle of the humerus. Action is it's a prime mover, and it allows for arm flexion and adduction. It pulls the rib cage up. Pectoralis minor, it's actually larger in cats than it is in humans, and it originates on the anterior surface of ribs 2 through 4 or 3 to 5 depending on the size of the cat. The insertion is at the coracoid process of the scapula, and the action is to draw the scapula down, forward, and bring the rib cage up. The xiphi humerales is this one here. This and this. It originates at the xiphoid process of the sternum, which is here, and insertion at the proximal end of the humerus, and it acts to adduct the forearm. Next, we're going to look at some deep muscles. We have the subscapularis here, which is right in here. It originates at the subscapular fossa of the scapula. Insertion is at the lesser tubercle of the humerus, and the action is to stabilize the shoulder joint. It holds the head of the humerus in the cavity, and it also can rotate the humerus. The teres major muscle is here. Right here. And it originates at the posterior surface of the scapula, inferior angle, and the insertion is at the lesser tubercle of the humerus. Action, it extends and adducts and medially rotates the humerus. The scalenes are in over here on this side. We have the scalene, the anterior scalene, which is way up here. Here's the anterior scalene, and it originates on the posterior tubercle of the transverse processes of vertebrae C3 through C6. Insertion is at the scalene tubercle of the first rib. The action is to elevate the first rib, flex and rotate the neck contralaterally, so side to side. again. It's the same one we went through earlier. It originates at the superior nuchal line of the skull and medial dorsal line of the neck. The insertion is at the clavicle, and the action is to draw the clavicle dorsally and cranially. The acromiotrapezius is here, and it originates at the spines of the cervical vertebrae. Insertion at the spine of the scapula. The action is to draw the scapula dorsally. So it draws the scapula back. Spinotrapezius is here, and it originates at the spines of the thoracic vertebrae. Insertion at the fascia of the scapula muscles, and the action is to draw the scapula dorsally. Levator scapulae is here, right here. Levator scapulae originates on the transverse processes of vertebrae C1 through C4. Insertion is medial border of the scapula, superior to the spine. The action is adduction and elevation of the scapula. It moves the glenoid cavity down and flexes the neck. Deep muscles of the back of the shoulder. Here we have the supraspinatus is here, and it originates on the supraspinous fossa of the scapula. And insertion at the greater tubercle of the humerus. The action is to help the deltoid abduct the arm at the shoulder, and it stabilizes the shoulder joint by drawing the humerus into the glenoid cavity, thus preventing the humerus from dislocation. The infraspinous fossa, or infraspinatus, is here. It's the bottom under the scapular spine, and it originates on the infraspinous fossa of the scapula. Insertion is at the middle portion of the greater tubercle of the humerus, and the action is to laterally rotate arm at the shoulder. It also stabilizes the shoulder joint by drawing the humerus into the glenoid cavity, which makes the humerus not dislocate. The rhomboideus is here. It's this whole muscle here. It originates in the spines of the thoracic vertebrae. Insertion is at the ventral border of the scapula, and the action is to draw the scapula dorsally. The rhomboideus capitis is here, and it originates at the superior nuchal line. Insertion is at the angle of the scapula, and the action is to draw the scapula cranially, so up. That's it.